Hello, everybody. We are live. It is Friday at 10 o'clock on Eastern time here, and I am Merritt, the founder and creator of Master of One Coaching. I come live just about every week here at 10 o'clock Eastern, and we're talking to my friends, colleagues, people I admire in the leadership sphere, and doing amazing things in the world. And today I'm so happy to bring my friend and colleague, Adrienne Peseller. Good morning, Adrienne.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks.
Wonderful. I'm so glad to have you here today. And so I would love to hear a little bit about your story, which today is called Charting Your Own Path. And because you have done that, you have found your way through various corporate experiences and in HR and operations. And you've also started your own business and in coaching and consulting. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that journey for you.
Sure. And I'm actually going to start it out by going back to even when I was a little girl. And one of my memories of something I used to spend a ton of time doing when I was little was playing school. I would set up my bedroom with all my stuffed animals and I would play school and I would teach them. And I loved school, but I also loved the idea of teaching others. And I was never the mean teacher. I was always nice and supportive. And I think, as you know, Merritt, that carried over into my adult life. And my leadership style is just helping people by encouraging them and supporting them and teaching. So I ended up going to college for teaching. My plan was to get an elementary education certificate. But while I was there, I decided to change my path. Not quite sure, but I did. And I walked out of there with a degree in psychology. And I started working at I had two jobs. And in that second job that I was at after college, I decided that teaching was really what I loved doing. And I went back to school while I was working full time and started to pursue my elementary education certificate again. While I was working, though, in my corporate role, and I was, working with customers, and I was getting a taste of new hire training and teaching others. And it was one-on-one coaching. I was young. I was in my early 20s, and I loved it. But what I thought I loved was that one-on-one piece, and I do. But the manager of our training department at the time tapped me on the shoulder for an opening in the new hire training group and asked if I would be interested. And believe it or not, my response was, no way. I could never stand up in front of a group of people and talk. And here I am today. And thankfully, she encouraged me, and I applied for the position and I got the role. And that was early in my career, but really where the rest of the history was written. I stayed with that company for 23 years. And that move into that training department really showed me, one, how I can take that love of teaching and apply it in a corporate setting. And I had just never really thought about that as an option. And it also expanded my interest beyond education and into leadership. And that person who tapped me was one of the first examples that I remember of the powerful impact that a leader has, of challenging you to think differently for yourself, kind of see something in you that maybe you didn't even see in yourself. And thankfully, I was very fortunate to have a lot of leaders in my life like that who kind of pushed me and encouraged me. And I ended up with a 23-year, very successful career at that same company where I had great opportunities in HR, leadership roles, operations, training, and that was really what I loved. And to your point, in July 2019, I made the very big decision that the opportunity presented itself, and I decided to leave and start a new chapter, which was a little scary and a little earlier than I was expecting to make that move. But it was a great experience to be able to invest in myself, my development, and start my own business. And that's where I'm at now.
It's really cool to hear that you were able to, well, first of all, I hear a couple of things. One is that someone identified something in you that you weren't aware of that was in yourself. So that is, and to be able to, and you were like initially like, no way, right? But she sounds like she really pursued that and was helping you nurture that, which is wonderful. And that role of a mentor is so huge. And then you were able to grow and take advantage of all the opportunities that were there. And then the scary choice of saying, hey, you
Mhm.
could take this new road, or you could stay where you are comfortable and where you know is where you can be successful. You have been, and you
Mhm.
chose that road. And I'm interested a little bit in that, actually, that moment, that decision. What helped you make that leap? Because I think a lot of people that I interact with, that I'm sure you interact with, people who watch this are looking
Mhm.
for, what is that? What are the elements that go into taking that step?
Mm. Yeah. So there were a couple things. Like I said, it was a really tough decision, and there were some different options that I was exploring within the company. The little voice that I was, starting to tune into just was, everything that would be put in front of me. It felt like, yes, I can do that. I know I would like it, but it felt almost like a repeat of things I had already done. And I
Mm,
felt like I was ready for something new and different. Um, as I moved up in the company, I did move further and further away from some of the one-on-one hands-on work with leaders, and particularly kind of that middle management population, or
mm,
people who were facing change and transition. That's really the area that I love working with people on. And I wasn't having as much of the opportunity to do that. Um, and the projects or the assignments that were being put in front of me weren't going to afford me that opportunity. So I just listened to that little voice of, you don't know what the next chapter will be, and it's time. Like, just this message. Every time I kind of got quiet and sat with it, I just kept getting this message of it's time. And
mhm.
truthfully, my plan was to stay there for probably another 9 years, I think was the timeline in my brain. But it was just, one door opens, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. And that little voice was reminding me it's time. Now, I did actually write an article about that experience and the thought process that went into it. That's on my LinkedIn profile. And it was really interesting to reflect back on it, because it was a roller coaster. So sometimes I would have that calmness of, yes, it's time. And then other times I would have, what are you, crazy? Don't do that now. Like, you have benefits, you have security, you like where you work, you like the people you work with. Um, but I just kept going back to I'm ready for something different.
Mhm.
And I had, a lot of people in my life who I was able to talk through the decision with. I had the opportunity of time, the luxury of time to think it through. Not everybody has that time. Um, so I took that time to talk to people who had already done it and see what worked for them. And so I was able to make the decision with clarity and with the confidence that I'll be okay and I can make this work. And I also knew, um, that for me, commuting was, certainly a big element of my day. And I had a teenage daughter at the time. I still have a teenage daughter. She was younger at that time. And I wasn't around as much as I wanted to be. And so that played into the decision as well, that time was fleeting, and that this would afford me the opportunity to be home with her more.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to mention that too, that you are a mom, and you have
Yeah.
you're married, and you have your mom is local too.
Hmm.
So you have family around you, and a lot of your community. You're connected with your community. You have a a network around you where you are really engaged, and there are responsibilities that come with that too, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times, I'm sure you hear this too. A lot of times, I hear people say, "I want to make this big transition, but what about all my responsibilities?
Yeah.
And I'm not 22 anymore, and footloose and fancy free." And so I
Hmm.
think it's really important what you said, if I was able to talk through it with some people who are my
Yeah.
stakeholders, essentially, right? I was
Hmm.
able to connect with them and not necessarily get their, like, what they want, like, because everybody wants something different, right? I'm sure you
Yeah.
got that too. And what are you nuts?
Hmm.
You probably got that too.
Yeah.
Did you get some
Yeah.
of that? What are you nuts?
Exactly. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um,
They get scared for me. Yes.
right, 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 sure. Yeah. And they all do that, because of, usually they think it's in your own best interest, usually, but frankly, it reflects their own fear, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
which is not it's not a condemnation. It's just how we're
Yeah.
wired. So getting quiet and listening to that little voice inside you, I talk a lot about that too with my clients in my boot camp this week too, about that little voice, like
Yeah.
the little visionary inside you. And you mentioned the
Mhm.
teacher inside of you, the one that
Yeah.
loved to play school, like to kind of connect back to that little visionary, that little teacher inside of you that was ready to do something
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
super aligned. That's awesome. So, so we talked a little bit about the experience and how you got to be where you are, tell me a little bit about how that passion has served as a through line for you.
So, there are a couple things. One, the passion on the education and the leadership side definitely was what shaped the vision I had for myself on the business that I was planning to create. Like I said, that business vision has been there for a long time. It just was happening earlier than I had expected.
Mm-hmm.
So that I knew that I wanted to do. The other passion that started to emerge more was this idea of, why do we all walk around so stressed out all the time, and running after the next day, and each day blends to the next, and this idea of burnout and busy and stressed out is a badge of honor. And so that became a bit of a passion of mine of, what, maybe I don't have to live like this. And I mentioned the quiet voice inside of me, but I'm also going to credit my daughter with something she said. This was the loud voice outside of me, where one particular day, after rushing to pick her up from somewhere in a busy commute, and I picked her up and we grabbed takeout dinner, and I was just sitting there exhausted and thinking about all the stuff I still had to get to. So I wasn't 100% present with her either. And I said to her, it won't always be like this. I won't always be this busy and stretched. And I shared with her this vision of my own business and what I wanted to do. And I said, that's, about, at that point, it was about 10 years out. And she said, well, why would you wait? Because I'm going to be all grown up by then.
Oh,
right. So heartstrings, but also I thought, oh my gosh, she's so right. And that was right at the beginning of this journey of needing to make the decision of where I was going to take my career with my company, because we were going through a restructure. So that outward voice or outside voice definitely played in as I was making the decision as well. And it created a bit of that passion for me of, why do we always live this busy, stressed out life that we're not present in what we have right in front of us? So that's one area of passion. And the other is, throughout my career, I have sometimes struggled with the fine line of being firm and assertive and holding people accountable as a leader, and this element of being viewed as a kind and nice person, which sometimes was equated as being weak. And so I also have passion in showing that leaders can be kind and hold people accountable and get results, that the two are not separate things. And I'm actually really encouraged by the increasing focus on human leadership and empathetic leadership, and seeing a shift in general leadership. So for me, that's something I've always had a lot of passion around. And I am so happy to see that there's this blank canvas to just make that happen in the world. So
yeah. I know that you've talked about that with me about, sort of the contrast between companies you worked with in the past and companies you're working with now.
mm-hmm.
And also, you and I, full disclosure, are we know each other for we know each other because you were referred to me by a mutual friend and colleague, and so you and I worked together for the last year, and now you're going out on your own.
I say that I've graduated. You graduated from Merritt.
But also, you are a trained coach from IPEC, which is the same organization that I train with, and we love. Shout out to IPEC.
Yes, shout out.
And that's a big thrust of what they train us. Is that compassionate leadership, that collaboration versus competition. That the old model of power over versus power with and power for. And how, so it's cool that you are seeing that shift out there in the bigger corporations that you're working with. I think that's really inspiring and heartening to me and those of us who are doing sort of, the movement that's happening, right? That you're seeing it because you're working with some pretty high level companies, which is wonderful. And so let's see, I was going to ask you about the impact that you have sort of envision yourself having, and not just in your work, but in your life, and how that passion for leadership and kindness and compassion, how that ties into the impact that you want, the legacy that you're leaving.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, my company name is AYB Consulting. And
Mhm.
AYB is an acronym that stands for At Your Best. So my business is built on helping people kind of get clear on what they view as their best, who is their best self, and how close are they operating to it today. And then to help them get there. I truly believe that people can create their future. And so many times, including me at times, we feel stuck or we feel like we have to do something or we're kind of burdened by the shoulds in our life, like what we feel like
Mhm.
we should do or we need to do, whether it's, chasing that next promotion or whatever it is. And as I mentioned earlier, of that stress and burnout being kind of a badge of honor. And with At Your Best, I want to help people discover, like I did, that you actually can have both. You can be very busy and very successful and not be, you know, burnt out and stressed out all the time. And you helped me identify, Merritt, where overwhelm is a choice and where can you step back and just kind of stay in that higher level of energy to think about things in a clearer way versus get kind of stuck in the stress of it, which paralyzes you. So that's one area, helping people see that, yes, you can still be successful and you can feel good and be healthy. Um, the other is helping people see how to lean into who they are and be authentic and not sacrifice their values in their
Mhm.
leadership roles. So how you can still be kind and supportive and connect with people and inspire performance without a command and control leadership style. So using more of a collaborative and partnership leadership style that coaches and engages people to get results. And that's my authentic leadership style. And I'm passionate about having more of that leadership in business and other settings.
I mean, it's worked for you. I mean,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
interesting that when you said earlier about how you felt that some people identified you or I can't remember the word you used exactly, but it was about like
yeah.
being told or criticized or whatever that because you weren't assertive
Mhm,
um,
mhm,
or aggressive. Rather, you are assertive, but you weren't aggressive. That you
yep,
weren't maybe getting things done or
mhm,
competent in leadership. And actually, what's happening, right? It's kind of like the changing of the guard. It's an
mhm,
evolution of the understanding of effective leadership is that very thing, right? It's the
yeah,
shedding of that old
mhm,
aggressive.
yep.
Would you say control? And what was it? What the phrase you used?
Command and control.
Command and control, right? I think about like Willie Loman, right? Death of a Salesman. It's like that, right? That whole like I'm going to be beaten down by my boss and then come home and
Mhm,
wonder if I'm a good person or
yeah,
and bringing our full selves,
mhm,
our our full holistic selves into leadership and to work, so that other people can have permission to do the same.
yeah, yeah, and that whole idea of, and it hasn't been everywhere in my career. I've certainly had supportive people around me who have tapped into that, niceness, I'll call it, and seen
Mhm.
it as a strength. But I've also received feedback and been perceived as not being strong or effective because of being nice. So this idea of like, well, nice and effective leadership can't exist at the same place. And the interesting thing too is for that command and control type of leadership, it's, it does get results. It oftentimes will get results, but it's not necessarily high levels of engagement and long-term results and sustainability. And so I do try to help people see that, you can actually get results and have more sustainability. But back to your question too about my legacy, for me, I want to know that I made a difference for people. And we have all had good bosses, bad bosses. Maybe we've been one of those. I want
Or
people who
both.
I've worked with. Yeah, right. Maybe we've been both. I want people I've worked with to feel like I made a difference in their life and it was a positive difference. And that when they think back to me and working with me, it's in a positive way that they are somehow made better from the experience and that they were able to bring their full self to the experience with me.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of how I lead and what I would want to leave behind for people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All right, so this is the portion of the program where we ask people if you could leave one kind of golden nugget of wisdom in our experience for our audience today, what would that be?
Okay, so there's two, if that's
Great.
okay.
Of course.
One is one that I've kind of carried for a long time, and I would share when I would do leadership coaching and in my work experience and stuff. And it was this idea of not being afraid to take risks. Because if you asked me in my early 20s when I started that career, or when that first manager tapped me on the shoulder and I moved into the training team, if you asked me then where I would be today and what path my career would have taken, I probably would have told you something very different. But as I was tapped beyond that first time for different experiences, or experiences that I pursued myself that maybe I didn't know if I was 100% ready for, or maybe I didn't know if I'd even like it, it was definitely pushing me to get out of my comfort zone. But if I didn't just say, you know what, let me give it a try and kind of have this, take a risk, see what happens. And I sometimes use the question of what's the worst thing that could happen here? And it's usually not as scary as we think it is. So that idea of don't be afraid to take a risk and to push yourself to get out of your comfort zone. And that's been one that I've carried with me for a long time. The other, though, that I think in the last probably 3 years, I've started to grow into a little bit more is to follow my gut. I think for a long time, I would hear that little quiet voice and I would shut it down, or it would be drowned out by the louder voices around me. And so I have learned to follow my gut a little bit more and to trust myself. And nobody knows what's right for me as much as I know what's right for me. And that was something that I've had some leaders who have really helped me learn to do that more, and role modeled it for me as well. And in that big decision of whether I leave corporate life and go out on my own, I had to listen to that little voice, because so many people were talking about, how successful I could still be there, and kind of bringing up the things that were definitely eliciting the fear reaction inside of me. But I had to keep going back to what I knew to be true for me and listen to my gut. And there is a quote I wrote down that I just wanted to share that kind of ties to both of those. That is, a bird sitting on a tree is never afraid of the branch breaking, because its trust is not in the branch, but in its own wings. And that's what it really comes down to, is take the leap and the net will appear, and listen to what's going on inside. You know what you want for yourself.
Yeah. I just got a little quote up here from Lucia. She says she's excited for this live. Thank you, Lucia. Lucia and Alicia, her sister, they're sister CEOs, and they're going to be joining us in a few weeks here as well.
Excellent.
Appreciate the support, Lucia. Thank you so much. And I also saw Sharon Rosen chime in here. Sharon, thanks for coming. And that's good to see you. I know you also are very much a heart-centered leader, and so is Lucia, and Alicia are too. So I know this resonates for a lot of people out there who watch this program.
Awesome.
And so, Adrienne, thank you so much for sharing all that. That's one of my very favorite quotes. And it's so, some of us, I think, and myself included, have really spent a lot of time figuring out if we can trust our own wings, right? And there's, for whatever reason, and we have a million different reasons for that, infinite reasons for that, learning how to trust our own wings. And I think that, I know a little bit about that for you personally and how that has been for you, but if you could kind of sum that up, and what helps you trust that voice? Was there one kind of thing that helped you, or was it a process? Like what was that process? What was that like for you?
I don't know that there was just one thing. I think it was a series of things. I believe also there were, events in my life. I've experienced some loss of very important people in my life. And it was a bit of that wake up call of, what do you want for yourself? Your clock is ticking too. So, I've shared with you how I sort of went into this YOLO mode, like you only live once, so go after everything. And, so that was probably a big contributor too, of listen to what you really want and take that leap to do it, because you don't get another shot at this. I used to work for somebody who would say, you don't get a redo. So,
anyway.
That was a bit of it, was kind of training myself to think, if I never got to do this again, would I have any regrets?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that idea of like, what's the worst thing that will happen? And kind of planning. So when I think it through in that logical way of kind of asking myself some questions, it lets me follow my gut a little bit more and stay true to who I am and the life I'm trying to create, and knowing that, we get one shot.
Yeah, awesome. Look at this. We have Rashim joining us today. She
Oh.
says, shout out to Adrienne Peseller, bringing compassion and awareness to leadership. Love it. Thanks, Rashim, for joining us today. I love that picture too. Wow. That's
He's a
intense.
very
I love it.
talented yoga
I see that.
professional.
I see
Yes.
that. That's amazing. Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. All right, my friend. So I'd like to use that as a springboard into sort of the last thing we were going to talk about today, which is you're a trained and certified coach. I'm a coach, and you have used your coaching throughout your career.
Yeah.
You shared with me right before we got on here, which I didn't even know, that even though you've been coaching and training for the last 20 plus years, you had never had a coach yourself until you and I met.
Right.
So what was that like for you to be on the other side of this relationship?
So it was really interesting. And part of the reason I never did, a little bit of it is because when you are in HR and you're getting coaches for everybody else, you just sort of learn through osmosis of their experiences.
Sure.
So, I never felt 100% the need to have my own coach. Also, because I did have the benefit of working with great leaders and having great mentors. So I had this network around me of support that was just always tremendous.
And you were attached to the material too. So you had exposure to the material all the time. Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. That was definitely that's always been a benefit of being in this type of work, is you grow and develop through it as well.
Yep.
But then I went out on my own. And I would say with that transition, one of the biggest learnings for me was that it can be a little lonely, and you suddenly don't have this team around you or this network as accessible as you do when you're inside the walls of a company. And so I was also embarking on something brand new, starting a business. I knew leadership and coaching, and I was pursuing this additional certificate, but I didn't know how to start and run a business. And so I came to you initially for that help and coaching. And I also at the time was just starting my certification. So I was just starting to scratch the surface on the energy leadership piece. I was very interested, and I had some awareness of what it was, but I didn't have this deep understanding of it. So truthfully, my first reach out was around, hey, I need to start this business and need some help doing it. Could you help me with that? And then, as you know, Merritt, it became so much more. You helped me, certainly in starting the business, but then it became getting much clearer on who I am, what I want that experience of being a business owner to be, who I wanted to show up as a leader, and getting clarity around what really makes me happy, what fuels me, what drains me, and how can I fill my days and my life with more of what fuels me versus what drains me. And the other thing I would add to that is giving me permission too. I mentioned earlier about we always feel like we should do certain things, and, kind of quieting that should voice and giving me permission to say, no, I don't want that. And, or maybe I need to ask for help on that piece, and really taking those pieces that might drain my energy a bit and in turn affect my performance and my stress level. And how do I elevate myself to be able to stay in that space of higher energy, better results, and ultimately more happiness? And I can say now, just about a year later, I am doing work I love with people I love, and, successful and happy. And a lot of that is thanks to you and that coaching that you were able to provide to me in a time that it was a little lonely and very uncertain, like I don't know what's next. And
during COVID too, right? So that was another piece of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Jeepers.
Add that layer on. And the pull to go back to safe and secure was strong. So that, kind of permission to take a leap and just be me. And so that was definitely one of the benefits of having that coaching experience myself.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's been such an honor and a privilege to work with you and to watch you evolve and grow. And you're just an absolute joy. So it's been totally my pleasure.
Oh, thank
And
you.
yeah, and you are such an exceptional leader, and you have so much not just experience, but wisdom, and you're a brilliant connector, and you have such a bright light about you. And so I'm sure that there are going to be throngs of people who watch this who say, how do I get in touch with that woman? Because she clearly is going to be an amazing asset to my life. And you describe yourself as a leadership, life, and change coach. Yes.
Yeah.
At AYB and
Yes.
consultant.
Yes.
So leadership, life, and change with vast experience in corporate leadership, but also individual and, kind of everything in between transformation. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, I do have a website, aybcoach.com. And also I can be emailed at adrienne@aybcoach.com.
And you can see her spelling there, Adrienne, 2 N's and an E.
Correct.
Excellent. Excellent.
And you have helped me be a better coach. So in going through that certification process and learning about energy leadership, I was also learning through you as I was getting my certification, and you've helped me be a better coach too, Merritt. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's very, very kind. All right, my friend. Well, I really appreciate you kind of came on last minute here as we had an opportunity that opened up, and I really appreciate you taking the risk and jumping into it, because I know this is not your total comfort zone, but welcome to the world of live video.
Yes,
and,
thank you.
You did an excellent job. Well done.
Oh, thanks. Thanks so much.
And so for more information about Adrienne, please go to her website. We'll put the website up in the comments too. It's aybcoach.com. Right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to double check that.
No problem. And if you are interested in growing and taking some risks yourself in a safe and supportive environment, this is the last week a week from Friday, the sale will close for the Genius Leadership Group, my very first foray into this group leadership coaching environment. We already have it's half full, so the seats are limited. If you're interested in that, please go ahead and send me a direct message or shoot me an email, and we'll have a conversation about whether that's a good fit for you or not, starting April 9th, but the sale closes a week from today, Friday, April 2nd. So thank you again, Adrienne, for coming. I really appreciate you being here. You are such a shining light, and it's just a joy to be in your presence. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Merritt. Thanks. You as well. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I'm going to end the live, but I'll just hang on just 1 second and we'll wrap up together. Bye, everybody. Have a great Friday.
Bye. Thank you.